Hey, how's it going?
Good.
Wow.
I'm in my temporary home.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah, it's recording me from like back there.
It's recording me from the sideways.
All right, we're going to try this.
Cats don't do harnesses, they don't do leashes, and we put no harnesses on them. And poor things, they like.
I got my mask. I'm trying to document. I'm doing a project. I'm documenting the block.
So, yeah, I started with this one because it was literally like a transition from the domestic into, I guess, what you could call like our public space, our public realm. That was really right out and work happening in the domestic space. And I thought it just was helped to kind of get across like the interrelatedness, I think, and the blurriness between those zones, especially now. Really where we live and have been living for the past 6 years, just the kind of immediacy between I guess our domestic spaces and some of these the public street and the public realm that has really been a part of our practice, but also like how much that one's environment informs their thinking and their work. So this is really was almost short enough to play just straight through, just walking out my door to Marcus Garvey Park, which is kind of our, in a way, our shared public space and a major public zone for our practice. So you can see the park there, and how in a way looking around last week at how the street is really this space that's helping to kind of maintain a certain sociality and social quality to a lot of our neighbors. And so I kind of made my way up a space that we know very well and was kind of reflecting, making my way up to the Acropolis, to the top of Marcus Garvey Park, kind of 5 to 6 years in to having lived in such close proximity to this space, about like maintenance and how we've kind of observed this space in a state of disrepair. And we've also observed this space in a state of kind of progressive maintenance. But how quickly one gets from kind of an idea of maintenance to ideas of care and repair, or lack thereof. I think they just opened the pool again. It had been closed. There had recently been a storm, I think last week, so there's a lot of debris around, which kind of, you can see it here, it really conjured, I think, some of the earlier years that we were living up here, and really the kind of dilapidated state that this space is still in some parts, but how much once you get to the top, how much has changed. But again, how the park is sustaining us right now, during COVID, and sustaining kind of public space. So again, kind of re-inhabiting the Acropolis now, 5 years on from when we did our piece, and thinking about how, our practice really began and has always had this really blurry line between kind of domestic space public space and sort of professional space, and how, you know, literally our practice for in the early years especially had to do with really kind of maintaining these spaces to some degree, but also how these spaces maintained our practice. And just the kind of plethora of work, you know, written work and design work, that this act of kind of maintenance and repair of that space really jump-started for our practice. And, you know, that this was really happening, you know, again, in different spaces around New York in the early years. And, you know, that we, you know, had to come back and even actively maintain because they were up for a year.
All right. So when I was looking to find content or images of Marcus Garvey Park, they have a new feature on this Google Photos, thank gosh, where it's a map, and you can see all of the images. And of course, like the ones that were from today, I went for the first social distanced live yoga class today. Just quickly walking through what my morning was like. It was nice to be, you know, in the park and be part of a live class. But yeah, I mean, to be able to walk out of the door and walk to our park and know that it has, you know, such history for us. You know, BRANDT brought students, and we've engaged with historians, and you know, this is it's definitely our park, and it's special to us. And I think it's something that when I think of the public realm, it's probably the first thing that I think about. And then, so I guess I did go back to Marcus Garvey Park. Some of those images, like, hey, we actually like built here, you know. And, you know, again, we were always looking to the tower, and that being a motivator and a reason for us to engage and to build work there. I think that without that, maybe we wouldn't have been so self-initiated and so interested in that. So I also, and there's lots of little videos to see what that place felt like and sounded like. Unfortunately, you can't get the smells like, but really we have it for, in all seasons. It's kind of great that we were able to, you know, twice over, you know, go build in a park where you're supposed to, the temporary buildings is only supposed to be 3 months, but we've had the luck and fortune of being able to have them extended, and seeing it through all seasons has been, I don't know, very exciting for me as an architect. Thinking about rituals, and I think one of the reasons why, when you mentioned that it is very much like our domestic realm as an extension, I think that this idea of maintenance and practice has a lot to do with that for us, because there are these routines that we do, you know, and there are routines to daily events, there are weekly events, there are monthly events, and seasonal. So look at these images and think about, again, the discourse and the creative work that came out of, you know, those discussions, and the collective drawing on those yoga mats, and how that came from a walk.
Beautiful, congratulations.
I know, it's been quite an amazing few months here.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
I can actually hear him. What's his name?
His name is Reese. R-H-Y-S.
No, you just completely threw everything.
Yeah. No, I get it.
I mean, literally, I'm telling you, Tuesday 10 to 11, we were on the call with these guys.
I like that because if I'm interpreting correctly, like we group the positives that we just did into values instead of into like categories of the existing structure.
All barriers, those are set to, that's where we're showing the lights being strong.
Okay.
Well, I had this moment last night where I was like, wow, I'm working in my live workspace.
I know.
It's
I
like
saw
a
that
dream.
posting. Remember, I was like, light?
It was like tea, candle, transducers, raw materials.
The original reason why I decided to even pull up this content was, one, because it has to do with Marcus Garvey Park, but two, because all of these images that were taken in this apartment. So in thinking about maintenance, I was thinking about daily practices and rituals and keeping things, you know, like a fresh coat of paint, keeping things new and keeping things up to date, and thinking about how our practice, even, you know, at times like this, like how do we without, you know, the work that of paying clients that just makes for new things, how do we also just keep our creative practice going? And I think we are pretty good at both schedules, game playing, kind of like what we're doing right now, and performing those performances, and like as if they're a repeated event, as if they're rituals. And so how to show what's behind the scenes, things like where is the broom closet, or where, you know, how do these things happen? For the Instagram post that I did last week, I recorded how I went about going and doing that. And so this was the setup that's in my bedroom. I think this is a picture when I was actually setting it up. But the video is, I guess, not too much longer after that. This is the video. But basically, it's me, you know, taking Reese and walking through the journal. And as you know, I think these are some of the stills that I was taking with the phone while that video was happening. And eventually, as you know, the final product was this Instagram post. So anyway, I put in a few screenshots of that stuff and look at patterns and to try to see things that he might be looking at. And so there are stills, like amazing patterns in our backyard, and so on and so forth. Yeah, I'll show this one.
Well, just the pattern on that truck.
Exactly, that's why I rushed up to go get it.
So I chose to start again looking at, because I've been thinking about these kind of devices that enable us in these times to kind of move between space, and another kind of transition that's very leaky, that's made more leaky by the city bike in this case, and this kind of ritual of biking to the sort of the place of work, our studio space. And so this is just some footage of kind of retracing that kind of daily activity, but now, you know, it's kind of this added layer that, you know, we're not really taking public transit, many of us right now. And so there's this immediacy kind of between environments and a continuity. And I just thought it was sort of interesting to kind of take stock a little bit of that, of the environment there, and then really think about the kind of immediate context of our building, really thinking about the experiential difference of the ritual now walking into an empty building and an empty kind of office studio workspace, which now during COVID has become this kind of really lonely experience. And then that perceptual difference of 90% of the time being the only person in the building now. And the kind of, you know, there is this perceptible lack of maintenance. And, you know, I think that we're now experiencing a kind of emptiness and a dereliction of these buildings, and of this building, which is always kind of empty. But the liveness that you see here, you notice there's a chain reaction that COVID has kind of set off, where so many of the artists are gone.
Yeah.
And so that juxtaposition of this place, which is really, you know, a lively space where a lot of our work happens has become a very different experience to go into work, to go into the office. The space of that building, which, you know, we know in our 2 years of being there as really a kind of space of almost co-production and a space of community with the artists. And then our office space as well, where the work has been happening, you know, very much in proximity to other bodies, and collaborative work where we've invited friends to use that space, which is, you know, now it seems like this distant memory when I'm in there by myself. But to see the sort of the liveness that gets transformed in our studio space in different moments, and how we've kind of brought the city into the space of the studio and done workshops and group activities in order to produce our work. So there you see on the wall that canvas that we made as a project, but we very much did it as a kind of embodied exercise. Which itself, you know, back to these leaky zones, it's a mixed use building already. Right. So the kind of living, working, and types of production and types of labor are already kind of layered in there, are now, I think that's being problematized, but also maybe accelerated by the vacancy that COVID has kind of set off. Like, what will this building be? Was some of the last work we were doing physically in the office. And now that's even a question mark. The most immediate this morning, being up in the Bronx, kind of as part of the neighborhoods now, you know, helping a restaurant owner actively transform the space of the street. So just the kind of the engagement with the way these different zones are having to be co-opted and changed, and how our practice is now sort of situated with, you know, has to take on these different spaces in order to address the moment that we're in.
We're in this period where COVID has really made us kind of re-challenge our notion to how we practice and what proximity and how we share creative work. You know, the internet has been around since we started our practice, and at the time we were very aware that there, you know, are friends of ours that have, you know, one person in California, one person in Chicago, and, you know, so on and so forth. And we've always kind of said how important it is for us to be, you know, in close proximity to one another, and, you know, how important, you know, local community is to us, and this studio. And, you know, I'm really grateful that we have had, you know, like a decade working together in such, you know, with that mindset. And now with COVID, it does make us rethink, you know, strategy and how to collaborate, and makes us reassess, you know, why we found that to be so important, and how we could maybe bring that into the digital realm. So one of our projects from most recent projects is in our studio building, and, you know, our domestic space and our practice, our professional environment. And, you know, what that this idea of maintenance for us, and we've been using the word meta a lot, which, you know, we haven't in the past, but for whatever reason, with COVID, reflection, and this way of playing with video and footage, and, you know, taking a step back and another step and looking at the larger picture, this idea of meta is, I think, important to understand this process that we've been trying to investigate with this assignment, if you will, and this game that we've played. The project in our studio on the ground floor is a great example, and I think I have some footage, yes, some of our time lapse, where we are able to see the two of us kind of setting up for what would become a more, you know, professional creative project. And then I also had one more. Oh, here it is. That work in progress reminds me of maintenance too, in terms of the way that we do construction administration. And it's kind of like maintaining the design intent, you know, as there are all these other players that come in and need to actively make it so there is a maintenance just to that.